War Chief Zarathek stood tall on the bridge of her massive warship, the Bone Render. Her green scales caught the light from the stars outside as she watched her fleet commanders gather before her. Today marked 200 years since she had destroyed the last humans in the galaxy. It was a day of celebration for the Void Dominion. The bridge was filled with reptilian warriors, all wearing their finest battle armor. Each one had earned their place through countless victories. They looked at their war chief with respect and fear. Zarathek had led them to control over half the galaxy. Under her command, the Dominion had crushed every species that dared to resist them. "My warriors," Zarathek spoke, her voice echoing through the chamber. 2 centuries ago, we completed our greatest victory. We removed the human disease from our galaxy forever. No more would their kind spread like poison among the stars. The assembled commanders roared their approval. Their voices shook the metal walls of the ship. They remembered the stories of human stubbornness, how the small pink creatures refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Many Dominion soldiers had died fighting humans who should have given up long before. Zarathek remembered those final battles clearly. She had personally led the assault on Earth's last colony on Kepler 442b. The humans had fought with weapons that barely scratched Dominion armor, yet they kept fighting until every single one was dead. She had executed their leader herself, a woman who spat defiance even with a plasma blade at her throat. The humans thought they were special, Zarathek continued. They believed their human spirit made them superior. But in the end they died just like any other weak species. A younger commander stepped forward and bowed his head. "War Chief, we have a tribute for this glorious anniversary." Zarathek nodded for him to continue. Tributes were common during celebrations. Usually they brought her weapons from defeated enemies or valuable resources from conquered worlds. "We found something strange in the Outer Rim territories," the commander said nervously. "Our scouts discovered an ancient escape pod drifting near the dead system of Tau Ceti. The pod was still functional after all these years." The war chief's eyes narrowed. Anything that survived for centuries in the void was worth examining. "What did you find inside?" 2 guards wheeled in a clear container filled with blue liquid. Inside the liquid floated a human body, perfectly preserved. The figure was male, wearing a strange uniform that Zarathek had never seen before. Advanced tubes and wires connected to his body, keeping him alive but unconscious. The bridge fell completely silent. Every warrior stared at the impossible sight before them. Zarathek felt her blood turn cold. She moved closer to the container, her claws clicking on the metal floor. "Impossible," she whispered, but her voice carried across the quiet bridge. "I killed the last human 200 years ago. I watched their final settlement burn. I counted their bodies myself." The nervous commander shifted on his feet. "The pod's technology is unlike anything we have seen, War Chief. Our scientists cannot understand how it works. The preservation system is far more advanced than our own." Zarathek walked around the container, studying the sleeping human from every angle. He looked to be in his 40s, with short dark hair and several scars on his visible skin. Some of those scars looked familiar. They were the kind left by Dominion plasma weapons. "Where exactly did you find this pod?" she demanded. "Drifting near the edge of Tau Ceti system, War Chief. It was moving very slowly, as if it had been traveling for many years. The pod's computer systems are still active, but we cannot read the data." Zarathek's mind raced with possibilities. If one human had survived, there might be others. The thought made her stomach twist with anger and fear. She had built her reputation on the complete destruction of humanity. If that was a lie, it would destroy her standing among the Dominion. But there was another possibility that worried her more. Humans were known for their tricks and traps. Even when losing, they often found ways to hurt their enemies. What if this was some kind of elaborate revenge plan? "How long has he been in this state?" she asked. "Our best estimate is about 200 years, War Chief. The timing matches the end of the human wars. 200 years. That meant this human had escaped during the final battles. Somehow he had gotten away while his people died around him. But why drift in space for so long? What was the purpose?" Zarathek studied the human's face more carefully. There was something about his features that seemed familiar. She had seen thousands of human faces during the war, but this one stirred a specific memory. "Wake him up," she ordered suddenly. Her commanders looked shocked. "War Chief, that may not be wise. We do not know what weapons or diseases he might carry." I said, "Wake him up." Zarathek's voice boomed across the bridge. "I want to know how he survived. I want to know if there are others." The nervous commander bowed quickly. It will take some time to safely reverse the preservation process. Our medical teams estimate several hours. Then get started immediately. I want guards around him at all times. The moment he opens his eyes, I want to know. As the medical teams began their work, Zarathek returned to her private chambers. She stared out at the stars and tried to calm her racing thoughts. The discovery of this human changed everything. Her perfect victory was suddenly incomplete. She remembered the human leader she had killed on Kepler 442b. The woman had said something strange just before dying. You think this is the end? You have no idea what you have started. At the time, Zarathek had assumed it was just the desperate words of a defeated enemy. Now she wondered if those words meant something more. The hours passed slowly. Zarathek tried to focus on other matters, but her thoughts kept returning to the sleeping human. She had fought his species for decades. She knew how dangerous they could be, not because of their strength, but because of their refusal to accept defeat. Finally, her communicator buzzed. War Chief, the human is beginning to wake up. Zarathek rushed back to the medical bay. The human was no longer in the blue liquid. Instead, he lay on a medical table, still unconscious but breathing normally. Medical instruments showed his vital signs growing stronger. His body is responding well to the revival process, reported the chief medical officer. All his biological functions appear normal for a human his age. Zarathek stood beside the table and waited. Around her, a dozen guards held their weapons ready. She had no idea what this human might do when he woke up, but she was prepared for anything. The human's eyes moved beneath his closed eyelids. His breathing changed from deep and slow to normal. Then slowly, his eyes opened. He stared up at the ceiling for a moment, blinking several times. Then he turned his head and looked directly at Zarathek. There was no fear in his expression, only a kind of tired sadness that made the war chief uncomfortable. "Hello, Zarathek," he said in perfect Dominion language. "I have been waiting a long time for you to find me." Zarathek stepped back from the medical table, her hand moving to her weapon. The human knew her name and spoke her language perfectly. This was not a coincidence or lucky guess. "How do you know who I am?" she demanded, keeping her voice steady despite her confusion. The human sat up slowly on the medical table. The guards around him raised their weapons, but he paid them no attention. He looked older than Zarathek had first thought, with lines around his eyes that spoke of many battles and hard decisions. "My name is Commander Marcus Chen," he said calmly. "I served with the Terran Deep Survey Division. We made it our business to know our enemies very well." Terran Deep Survey? Zarathek had never heard of this human military unit. That was not in any of our intelligence reports. Marcus smiled sadly. That was the point. We were humanity's most secret organization. While you were hunting down our colonies and settlements, we were doing something much more important. The war chief's eyes narrowed. All human military units were destroyed. I personally confirmed the death of every human commander. You confirmed the death of every commander you knew about. Marcus corrected her. The Deep Survey operated differently. We had no permanent bases, no fixed territories. We lived in the void between stars, preparing for humanity's future. One of Zarathek's advisors stepped forward. War Chief, this is clearly a trap. We should eliminate this creature before it can cause harm. Marcus looked at the advisor with the same sad expression. If I wanted to harm you, I would have done it already. The pod you found me in could have been filled with explosives or biological weapons. Instead, it contained only me and a message. What message? Zarathek asked, though part of her did not want to know the answer. That humanity knew this day would come. We knew you would find one of us eventually. We have been waiting 200 years for this conversation. The medical bay fell silent except for the humming of machines. Zarathek studied Marcus's face, looking for signs of deception or madness. She found neither. The human appeared completely sane and truthful, which made his words even more disturbing. You speak as if humanity planned its own extinction, she said. In a way, we did. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the medical table and stood up slowly. The guards tensed, but he made no threatening moves. Tell me, War Chief, what did you think when you achieved total victory over my people? Zarathek considered the question. I thought the galaxy was safer without human interference. Your species was unpredictable and dangerous. And after you destroyed us, did the galaxy become peaceful? The question hit Zarathek like a physical blow. In the 200 years since humanity's destruction, the Dominion had continued expanding. They had conquered dozens of other species and absorbed their territories. The galaxy was far from peaceful. The Dominion brings order to chaos, she replied, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Marcus nodded as if he had expected this answer. The Deep Survey spent 50 years studying galactic history before the final war began. Do you know what we discovered? Despite her better judgment, Zarathek found herself curious. Tell me. We learned that the galaxy goes through cycles. Every few million years, one species becomes dominant and begins destroying all others. When that species becomes too powerful and too aggressive, something stops them. What stops them? One of the commanders asked before Zarathek could silence him. Marcus's expression grew even more serious. The Architects, an ancient race that watches from the void between galaxies. When a species threatens the balance of life, the Architects return to restore order. Zarathek felt a chill run through her scaled body. You are speaking of myths and legends. Am I? Marcus reached into his uniform pocket slowly, making sure the guards could see his movements. He pulled out a small data device. This contains 200 years of deep survey observations. Star charts showing massive objects moving in the space between galaxies. Energy readings that match no known technology. Evidence that the Architects are real and they are coming. The war chief stared at the device. Every instinct told her this was a human trick, but something in Marcus's manner suggested he was telling the truth. Even if such beings exist, why should I care? She asked. The Dominion is the strongest military force in the galaxy. Because your rapid expansion has triggered their attention, Marcus said quietly. The Architects judge species by their actions. Peaceful races are left alone. Aggressive species that threaten galactic balance are eliminated completely. One of the advisors laughed harshly. And I suppose humanity was peaceful? You fought us for decades. Marcus looked at the advisor with pity.
Humanity fought to survive.
But we never tried to conquer the entire galaxy. We never systematically destroyed other species. The Architects saw us as acceptable, even with our flaws. But they will destroy the Dominion? Zarathek asked, though she was not sure she believed any of this. They are already on their way. Deep survey stations detected the first Architect ships leaving the void 3 months ago. They move slowly, but they are unstoppable once they arrive. Zarathek felt the deck beneath her feet as if it might collapse. If this is true, why are you telling me? Why help the species that destroyed yours? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was filled with pain. Because despite everything the Dominion did to humanity, we still believe some lives are worth saving. We spent 200 years preparing for the Architect return. We developed weapons and strategies that might work against them. But we cannot implement these plans alone. What do you mean? The scattered survivors of humanity have been hiding throughout the galaxy, building secret bases and advanced technologies. But we need allies. We need someone the Dominion will listen to. Someone with the authority to unite your people with ours. Zarathek understood now why the pod had drifted until her forces found it. You want me to convince the Dominion to ally with humanity? I want you to help save both our species, Marcus corrected. The Architects do not distinguish between conqueror and conquered. When they arrive, they will sterilize every world the Dominion has touched. Billions will die unless we work together. The medical bay was completely silent. Zarathek's commanders looked at her, waiting for orders. She could have Marcus killed immediately and pretend this conversation never happened. She could dismiss his warnings as human lies and continue with business as usual, but something in his eyes told her he was not lying. The sadness she saw there was not the sadness of defeat, but the sadness of someone who knew terrible truths. Show me your evidence, she said finally. Marcus nodded and activated the data device. Holographic displays filled the air above them, showing star charts and energy readings that Zarathek did not recognize. The scale of what she was seeing made her feel very small. These readings were taken from the edge of the galaxy over the past 2 centuries, Marcus explained. Notice how the energy signatures grow stronger over time. The Architects are not just coming, they are almost here. Zarathek studied the data, her military mind analyzing the tactical implications. If even half of what Marcus claimed was true, the Dominion faced a threat unlike any in their history. Assuming I believe you, she said slowly, what exactly are you proposing? Marcus looked directly into her eyes. An alliance between the survivors of both our species. Human technology and knowledge combined with Dominion military strength. It is the only way either of us will survive what is coming. The war chief who had destroyed humanity was being asked to save it. Zarathek stared at the holographic displays floating above Marcus's data device. The images showed vast structures moving through the darkness between galaxies, each one larger than entire star systems. The energy readings were unlike anything in Dominion records. These could be fake, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Human technology was always good at creating false images. Marcus nodded calmly. I expected you to say that. But look at this data more carefully. Notice the timestamps on these readings. Some go back 300 years, long before the war between our species began. Zarathek examined the time codes on the displays. Marcus was right. Many of the readings predated the human-Dominion conflict. Either this was an incredibly elaborate deception planned centuries in advance, or the data was real. Even if these architects exist, she said, how do you know they are hostile? Marcus touched a control on his device and the display changed to show historical records. The deep survey found evidence of their previous interventions. 12 million years ago, the Zephyrians dominated this galaxy much like the Dominion does now. They conquered species after species, showing no mercy to those who resisted. The display showed ancient ruins on dozens of worlds. Each ruin bore the same marks, precise, surgical destruction that eliminated all traces of advanced civilization, while leaving the planets themselves intact. The Zephyrians were completely wiped out in a matter of months, Marcus continued. Every ship, every city, every trace of their empire was erased. But the worlds they had conquered were left undamaged, allowing other species to eventually rebuild. One of Zarathek's advisors stepped closer to study the images. How can you be certain the architects were responsible? These ruins could have been created by any number of catastrophes. Marcus changed the display again, showing energy signatures from the ancient ruins. Notice the similarity to the readings from the approaching objects. The weapon signatures are identical. The architects have done this before and they are coming to do it again. Zarathek felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. The evidence was compelling, but accepting it meant acknowledging that her greatest victory, the destruction of humanity, might have doomed her own people. Why would the architects care about the Dominion? She asked. We bring order to chaotic systems. We eliminate weakness and create strength. From your perspective, yes, Marcus said sadly, but the architects see it differently. They view aggressive expansion as a disease that threatens the entire galaxy. When one species tries to control everything, it disrupts the natural balance of life. And humanity was different. The question came from Commander Rolth, Zarathek's second-in-command. Your people fought just as hard as we do. Marcus looked at Rolth with the same patient sadness he had shown everyone else. Humanity fought to survive and defend our territory. We never tried to conquer species just because we were stronger. We made allies, not slaves. You made allies because you were weak, Rolth shot back. The strong do not need to beg for friendship. The strong who refuse friendship often find themselves alone when greater threats appear, Marcus replied quietly. Zarathek raised a hand for silence. The philosophical debate was less important than the practical implications. If the architects are coming, how long do we have? Marcus manipulated the display to show current tracking data. Based on their observed speed and trajectory, the first architect ships will reach the outer edge of Dominion space in approximately 6 months. 6 months. Zarathek's mind raced through the logistics. Even if she could convince the Dominion leadership to take this threat seriously, 6 months was barely enough time to reorganize their entire military strategy. What weapons do you have against them? She asked. Marcus smiled for the first time since awakening, though it was not a happy expression. That is where human stubbornness became useful. When the deep survey realized the architects were real, we spent 2 centuries developing countermeasures. The display changed to show technical specifications for weapons and defense systems that Zarathek did not recognize. The technology appeared to be decades ahead of anything the Dominion possessed. We learned to hide our activities from architect observation methods, Marcus explained. We developed ships that can avoid their detection systems and weapons that can penetrate their defenses. But we cannot deploy these tools without help. What kind of help? Manufacturing capability. The hidden human colonies have the knowledge to build these weapons. But we lack the industrial infrastructure to produce them in large quantities. The Dominion has factories and shipyards throughout the galaxy. Zarathek began to understand the scope of what Marcus was proposing. You want to combine human technology with Dominion manufacturing. More than that, we need coordinated strategy and unified command. The architects will not give us multiple chances to stop them. Our first counterstrike must succeed completely, or both our species will be extinct within a year. The weight of the decision pressed down on Zarathek like the gravity of a dying star. She had built her entire career on the principle that strength meant never showing weakness to potential enemies. Now she was being asked to ally with the species she had nearly eliminated. Where are these hidden human colonies? She demanded. Marcus hesitated for a moment. That information can only be shared if you agree to the alliance. Too many human lives depend on maintaining our secrecy. And if I refuse, then you condemn both our species to extinction. The Dominion cannot fight the architects alone, and neither can humanity. Together we might have a chance. Zarathek walked away from the group, moving to the viewing port that looked out at the stars. She had conquered many of those stars, bringing them under Dominion control through force and fear. The idea that something even more powerful was coming to judge her actions was almost impossible to accept. But the evidence was compelling. The energy readings, the historical data, the timing of Marcus's appearance, it all pointed to the same conclusion. The galaxy faced a threat that made all previous conflicts seem insignificant. Assuming I agree to consider this alliance, she said without turning around, what would you need from me? Access to Dominion military commanders and industrial leaders, shared intelligence on fleet positions and defensive capabilities. Most importantly, your personal guarantee that human survivors will be treated as allies, not prisoners or slaves. Zarathek almost laughed at the irony. The species she had tried to exterminate was now asking her to protect them. And what guarantee do I have that this is not an elaborate human revenge plot? Marcus was quiet for a long moment before answering. You have my word as a soldier who has seen too many worlds burn. Revenge is a luxury we cannot afford when extinction threatens everyone. The war chief turned back to face him. In his eyes, she saw the same determination she remembered from human soldiers during the war. But now that determination was tempered by something else, a desperate hope that somehow impossible cooperation might save both species. I will need to see proof of these hidden colonies, she said finally. And I will need to examine your weapons technology personally. Marcus nodded. That can be arranged, but once you know the locations of our bases, there will be no turning back. You will be committed to the alliance whether you like it or not. Zarathek looked around at her commanders. Most of them appeared skeptical or openly hostile to the idea of cooperating with humans. Convincing them would be almost as difficult as fighting the architects themselves, but the alternative was unthinkable. If Marcus was telling the truth, refusing his offer meant watching the Dominion burn while she could have prevented it. Show me everything, she said. The emergency meeting of the Dominion High Command took place aboard Zarathek's flagship, 2 days after Marcus had been awakened. 12 of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy sat around a circular table, their scales reflecting the harsh lights of the war room. At the center of the table, Marcus's data device projected images of the approaching architect fleet. Fleet Admiral Corex, the oldest member of the High Command, studied the holographic displays with obvious skepticism. You expect us to believe that mythical beings are coming to destroy us based on the word of a human? Zarathek had anticipated this reaction. Her fellow commanders had built their careers on the same principles she had. That strength meant never showing weakness, never retreating, never asking for help. The idea of allying with humanity challenged everything they believed. I have examined the evidence personally, she replied. The data is consistent and compelling. These architect ships are real, and they are approaching our territory. Even if that is true, said Fleet Admiral Vex, why should we trust anything the humans tell us? This could be an elaborate trap designed to weaken our defenses. Marcus, who had been sitting silently in the corner under heavy guard, finally spoke. With respect, Admiral Vex, if humanity wanted to weaken your defenses, we would not need to create such an elaborate deception. A simple virus uploaded to your computer networks would be far more effective. Several commanders reached for their weapons at this casual mention of sabotage possibilities. Zarathek raised a hand to calm them. He makes a valid point, she said. If this is a human trick, it is unnecessarily complicated. More importantly, our long-range sensors have begun detecting anomalous energy readings at the edge of the galaxy. This was true, Over the past day, Dominion observation posts had reported strange signals from the void beyond their territory. The readings matched some of the patterns Marcus had shown them. Fleet Admiral Corex leaned forward in his chair. Our sensors detect many things, War Chief. Space is full of natural phenomena that can create unusual energy signatures. Not like these. Zarathek activated her own display showing the latest sensor reports. These signals are moving in coordinated patterns. They show clear signs of artificial construction and purposeful direction. The room fell quiet as the commanders studied the new data. Some looked troubled, others remained skeptical, but none could deny that something was approaching from the darkness between galaxies. Assuming these architects are real, said Fleet Admiral Rin, what makes you think we need human help to fight them? The Dominion has crushed every enemy we have faced, Marcus answered before Zarathek could respond. Because the Dominion has never faced an enemy like this. Your strategies are built around conquering other species with similar technology and similar thinking. The architects are millions of years more advanced than any civilization in this galaxy. Then how do you propose to fight them? Demanded Fleet Admiral Vex. If they are so powerful, what difference can your human tricks make? We spent 200 years studying them, Marcus explained patiently. We learned their methods, their technology, their weaknesses. Human engineering adapted specifically to counter their weapons and defenses. But our knowledge is useless without the industrial capacity to build weapons in sufficient quantities. Fleet Admiral Corex slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. You ask us to abandon centuries of successful military doctrine based on the promises of a species we rightfully destroyed. You did not destroy us, Marcus said quietly. You destroyed our visible settlements and obvious military forces. The Deep Survey always remained hidden, preparing for this moment. The admission sent shockwaves around the table. If humans had been hiding in Dominion territory for 2 centuries, it meant their intelligence and security systems had been compromised for generations. How many of you are there? Zarathek asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. Enough to matter, but not enough to threaten you. Our hidden colonies have perhaps 50,000 people total, scattered across dozens of concealed bases. Fleet Admiral Rin looked furious. 50,000 humans have been living in our territory without our knowledge? This is a security disaster. It is also proof that we could have struck at you many times over the past 2 centuries, Marcus pointed out. If revenge was our goal, we would not have waited this long. Before anyone could respond to this uncomfortable truth, an alert signal filled the war room. A young communications officer appeared on the main screen, looking nervous and excited. War Chief, we have urgent reports from Observation Post Omega-7 at the Galactic Rim. They report massive contacts approaching from outside the galaxy. The war room erupted in shouting as commanders demanded details. Zarathek silenced them with a gesture and ordered the communications officer to continue. The contacts match no known ship configurations. They are approximately 50 kilometers in length and moving at significant sublight speed. Estimated time of arrival at our outer territories is 5 months, 23 days. The exact timeline Marcus had predicted. Zarathek looked around the table and saw her own realization reflected in her commanders' faces. The approaching threat was real. How many ships? She asked. Current count is 47 vessels, but more are becoming visible as they approach. The observation post estimates the final count may exceed 100 ships. 100 ships, each 50 kilometers long. Even if they were hollow shells, the scale was beyond anything the Dominion had ever faced. Their largest dreadnoughts were barely 5 kilometers from bow to stern. After the communication ended, the war room remained silent for several minutes. Finally, Fleet Admiral Corex spoke in a subdued voice. Even if we accept that this threat is real, allying with humans feels like admitting defeat. How can we trust a species we tried to eliminate? Marcus stood up slowly, his movements careful and unthreatening. Fleet Admiral, may I tell you something about human nature that your intelligence reports probably missed? Corex nodded grudgingly. Humans have a concept called enlightened self-interest. It means we can work with people we dislike if it serves a greater purpose. We do not need to be friends to be allies. We just need to want the same outcome. And what outcome is that? Survival. Both our species want to continue existing. The architects threaten that goal. Everything else is secondary. Fleet Admiral Vex leaned back in her chair. What exactly are you offering? What weapons and knowledge do you possess that could make a difference? Marcus activated his data device again, showing new technical specifications. stealth technology that can hide entire fleets from architect sensors, weapons that can penetrate their defensive shields. Most importantly, detailed intelligence on their command structures and tactical methods. The technology displayed was clearly decades ahead of current Dominion capabilities. Even the most skeptical commanders could see the potential advantage these innovations might provide. "How do we know you will share this technology honestly?" asked Fleet Admiral Wren. "What prevents you from giving us false information or sabotaged equipment?" "Because if you fail, we all die," Marcus said simply. "Human survival depends on Dominion success. We have no choice but to give you our best weapons and our most accurate intelligence." Zarathek stood up and walked to the viewing port. Outside, she could see the lights of her vast fleet stretching in all directions. Thousands of ships representing the military might of the most powerful empire in galactic history. But if Marcus was right, all that power would be meaningless against the approaching architects. Pride and tradition would not stop weapons that could destroy entire star systems. "I am calling for a preliminary vote," she announced. "All in favor of investigating this proposed alliance with human survivors." The vote was closer than she had hoped. 6 commanders voted in favor, 5 against with 1 abstention. It was enough to proceed, but barely. "The motion carries," Zarathek said. "We will examine the human proposals and technology. If their claims prove accurate, we will consider a formal alliance." Fleet Admiral Korek stood up angrily. "This decision will be reported to the Dominion Council. They may not support your choice to trust our former enemies. Then I will explain to the Council why survival requires flexibility," Zarathek replied. "Sometimes the price of victory is admitting we cannot win alone." 3 months had passed since the vote to investigate the human alliance. The hidden human colonies had revealed themselves to selected Dominion commanders, sharing technology and intelligence that proved Marcus had been telling the truth. But the cooperation came almost too late. The first Architect probe ships had reached the outer rim of Dominion space, and the results were devastating. 3 entire star systems had been sterilized in a matter of hours. Every planet stripped of life, every artificial structure reduced to component atoms. The precision was terrifying. Each world left physically intact but completely empty of everything that had made it alive. Zarathek stood on the bridge of her flagship, now equipped with human stealth technology and experimental weapons. Around her, a mixed fleet of Dominion and human vessels prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. The Architect's main fleet was moving toward the galactic core, where an ancient superstructure waited to be activated. "War Chief," reported her tactical officer, "human intelligence confirms the Architect's target. They are heading for the core nexus." Marcus, now serving as the human liaison to Zarathek's command staff, nodded grimly. "The nexus is their ultimate weapon. When activated, it will send a sterilization pulse throughout the entire galaxy. Every world, every species, every trace of advanced life will be eliminated." The core nexus was a structure older than any known civilization, hidden in the dangerous gravity field surrounding the galactic center. Human deep space explorers had discovered it decades ago but never understood its purpose until now. "How long until they reach it?" Zarathek asked. 18 hours at their current speed," Marcus replied. "Once they begin the activation sequence, we will have perhaps 6 hours before the pulse is complete. 6 hours to save every living thing in the galaxy." The weight of responsibility was crushing, but Zarathek had learned to carry impossible burdens over the past months. Not all of the Dominion had accepted the human alliance. Fleet Admiral Korex had led a rebellion against her authority, taking nearly 40% of the Dominion fleet with him. They had retreated to the far edge of the galaxy, declaring Zarathek a traitor and vowing to rebuild the pure Dominion after the Architects were gone. It was a decision that condemned them all to death, but pride was stronger than logic for some warriors. "Status report on our combined fleet," Zarathek ordered. 2,600 Dominion vessels, modified with human stealth and weapons technology, her tactical officer reported. 400 human ships built specifically for this engagement. Total crew complement of 8 million, representing both species. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Under normal circumstances, it would be unstoppable. Against the Architects, it felt pitifully small. "War Chief," Marcus said quietly, "there is something I need to tell you about the final phase of our plan." Zarathek looked at him. Over the months of cooperation, She had developed a grudging respect for the human commander. He had kept every promise, shared every secret, and never once suggested that humanity deserved better treatment because of the Dominion's past actions. What is it? Stopping the core nexus requires more than just destroying the architect ships. Someone will need to get inside the structure and manually override its activation sequence. The radiation levels inside will be fatal to any organic life within minutes. The implication was clear. It was a suicide mission. Can it be done remotely? Zarathek asked, though she already knew the answer. The architects designed their systems to prevent remote interference. Physical presence is required to access the core controls. Around them, the bridge crew continued their preparations, unaware that their leaders were discussing who would die to save the galaxy. Zarathek studied Marcus's face and saw the same determination that had driven him through 2 centuries of hiding and preparation. You always intended to volunteer for this mission, she said. Marcus nodded. Human survivors can rebuild from 50,000 people. The Dominion needs its war chief to lead the recovery efforts. This is my responsibility. No, Zarathek said firmly. This is our shared responsibility. We go together. Marcus looked surprised. War chief, that is not necessary. Your people will need leadership after the battle. My people will have leadership, but some victories require sacrifice from those who command them. Zarathek turned to address her bridge crew. Attention all stations. We are beginning the final approach to the core nexus. All ships will engage stealth systems and prepare for combat. The combined fleet moved through space like shadows, their human-designed stealth technology hiding them from architect sensors. The enemy ships were visible ahead, massive structures that dwarfed anything built by younger species. As they approached the core nexus, Zarathek could see the true scope of architect engineering. The nexus itself was larger than most moons, a complex lattice of energy conduits and processing cores that extended deep into the gravitational maelstrom of the galactic center. All ships begin attack run, Zarathek ordered. Human vessels will target the architect fleet. Dominion forces will create a path to the nexus core. The battle began with a coordinated strike that caught the architects completely off guard. Human weapons designed specifically to penetrate their defenses tore through architect shields like they were made of paper. Dominion firepower, enhanced with human targeting systems, destroyed several of the massive ships before they could respond. But the architects adapted quickly. Their return fire was devastating, capable of destroying entire ships with single shots. The combined fleet began taking heavy losses as the enemy brought their full defensive systems online. War Chief, we have lost 600 ships in the first engagement, reported the tactical officer. The architects are focusing their fire on our larger vessels. Zarathek watched as another Dominion dreadnought vanished in a ball of plasma. Good warriors were dying to buy her and Marcus the time they needed to reach the Nexus core. Launch the assault shuttles, she ordered. All remaining ships are to maintain attack formation until the final moment. The small shuttle carrying Zarathek and Marcus launched from the flagship's docking bay, using the chaos of battle to slip past architect defenses. Behind them, the combined fleet continued its desperate attack, drawing enemy attention away from the real objective. Inside the core nexus, the environment was hostile beyond imagination. Radiation levels that would kill most species in seconds, gravity fluctuations that could crush unprotected bodies, and energy discharges that turned metal to vapor. Both Zarathek and Marcus wore the most advanced protective suits available, but they knew the protection would not last long. They fought their way through automated defenses and complex security systems, following Marcus's memorized path to the central control chamber. By the time they reached their destination, both suits were showing critical damage from radiation exposure. The control chamber was a sphere of pure energy, suspended in the exact center of the Nexus structure. Inside the sphere they could see the activation controls but reaching them meant stepping through energy fields that would instantly destroy any protection they wore. There, Marcus pointed to a manual override panel inside the sphere. If we can reach that console and input the shutdown sequence, the pulse will be stopped. Zarathek looked at the swirling energy around the console. Even with their suits, they would have perhaps 30 seconds before the radiation killed them. It was enough time to complete the shutdown, but not enough to escape. Together, she said. They stepped through the energy field at the same moment. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but both warriors forced themselves to continue moving. Marcus reached the console, first and began entering the shutdown codes while Zarathak provided cover against the automated systems, still trying to stop them. With seconds remaining, before their suits failed completely, Marcus entered the final command. Throughout the core nexus, systems began shutting down. The sterilization pulse flickered and died, its energy dissipating harmlessly into space. As they collapsed beside the console, both warriors knew they had succeeded. The galaxy would survive and their species would have a chance to build something better from the ruins of the war. Marcus, Zarathak said as her strength faded, I want you to know that fighting beside humanity has been an honor. Marcus smiled through his pain. The honor was ours, War Chief. Perhaps our species will do better as allies than they ever did as enemies. Outside the Nexus, the surviving ships of both fleets watched as the Architect vessels powered down and began retreating to the void between galaxies. The immediate threat was over, but the work of rebuilding would take generations. Both commanders died knowing their sacrifice had meaning. In the years that followed, the alliance they forged would become the foundation for a new era of cooperation among all galactic species. The war that began with genocide ended with the recognition that survival required unity, not conquest. The galaxy remembered their names and their example for millennia to come. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.